You are watching TJX The Japan Experience, hosted by me, DJ Gladiator. DJ City's off on another assignment, so that's why you're not seeing him here. Today we're going to talk about the mini disc. Okay? It was a huge part of the Japanese music industry in the 90s, which is why we're talking about it. It's also something that I really loved and got into. So, as you can see here, I'm holding a mini disc, so you can see how big the discs actually are. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about the history of the mini disc. It was released by Sony back in the early 90s, about 1992 actually, and they actually had two applications in mind when they released it. The first application was as a straight data device, much like a CD recorder or a hard drive would be able to record, and they thought for business purposes would be the main reason. That didn't take off mainly because the equipment to record onto the disc with was too expensive. The other one that did take off was as a music player and recorder. So when they first started out, it was with a 60-minute disc. The discs then went to 74 minutes and finally 80 minutes before the high MD was released in the early 2000s. I got into it when I went to Japan back in 1997. I remember reading about it in the local paper in the early 90s and then forgetting about it completely because, hey, I was just a high school kid at that time. Got to Japan and I saw MDs everywhere. Now, mini disc was incredible because it was as much about the media and the way the discs looked as it was about the recording. Okay? Not only that, you could go down to your local Blockbuster type store, in this case Staya, you may have heard us talk about it before, and you could rent the music. Instead of going out and spending, $10 for the CD single or $30 for the album, you could just go down, rent it, come back to your stereo, record it, and then you've got the music at almost CD quality without any purchasing of the product. Okay, so now I want to talk about recording to the mini disc. And in my hand right now is the Sony N1, which was the first NetMD unit, but we'll get into NetMD a little bit later. Okay, so back in the 90s, when you were recording to a disc, okay, you were recording in real time, meaning that if you were recording to, say, this disc, which is 74 minutes long, you had to sit there and listen to all of the music for 74 minutes. So by the time you listen to the music, put all the CDs in, change them, put the names on, it was probably taking you the better part of 90 minutes to record a disc. So that was one of the reasons why it was not a success in North America. A lot of people in Japan and other parts of the world didn't mind sitting there and listening to the music as they recorded it, just like me. I didn't care. But in North America, a lot of the media that talked about mini disc hyped on the fact that it was in real time. That if you were doing, as I said, the 74-minute disc, you had to sit there for the full 74 minutes listening to the music. Okay? Now, the next step up from just straight standard definition recording was MDLP, standing for Mini Disc Long Play. So this was a compression system that allowed you to record at twice the length of the disc or 4 times the length of the disc, meaning that with an 80-minute disc you could get over 5 hours of music on a single disc. This was great, but again, you had to record in real time for probably about 6 months until the N1 was released. Now, the N1, being a NetMD, allowed you, through use of a cradle like this, allowed you to connect via USB to your computer, and it greatly reduced the time that it took you to record. Now, of course, you could then play with your track listing and do all kinds of fun stuff before you actually press the record button, but it was a lot faster in the physical record process. Now, after the N1 was released, Sony released a stereo system. They called it the LAM1. And of course, being a NetMD fan, I had to buy one. This I got from Japan, and it allowed you to put CDs in, which you could record at high speed to the mini disc. And just like the N1, it had a USB connection, so you could put it straight into your computer and do all of your editing on the computer. So it was a really handy device. Mine unfortunately broke, and Sony Canada couldn't fix it because it wasn't from Canada. After the NetMD came out, it was shortly that the MP3 was, well, actually not after. Before the N1 came out, the MD started to take over, which is why Sony went to the NetMD. Okay? The last phase of the mini disc was what Sony called the high MD. This was a 1 gigabyte disc that could hold, what was it, something like 43, 45 hours of music and 1 gigabyte of data. Okay? And with the high MD, Sony decided to try to go back to what the MD was originally purposed for, which was being a data drive, as well as being a music drive. But because of the popularity of the iPod and other MP3 players, it just didn't work. Now, one of the other things that Sony did, which really ticked me off and a lot of other fans of MD, was they released the PlayStation Portable. And when they released the PlayStation Portable, what they did was created another disc to use. They called it the UMD, the Universal Media Disc. And if you look at an MD and a UMD together, the only difference is there's more plastic in the square of the mini disc. The UMD is circular. So if Sony had actually made the UMD a square, like the regular MD, who knows where the MD could be today. It may still be in use. Now, you're probably wondering, why do I love mini disc? Why do I still have it when MP3 is so taken over? Well, the easy way to put it is choice. Back in Japan, where it was popular, okay, not only did you have Sony, who created the MD, but you also had Panasonic, Sharp, and Sanyo that made players for it. You also had choice in who you went with for your media. And the media was all kinds of colors, making it look good. You had TDK making discs. You had Maxell making discs. And you can see how these look so colorful and so different. So it was as much about looking good with the media as it was having it sound good. You also had accessories like this. So you could store your Walkman, your MD Walkman, quite conveniently. This one is the N10, the 10th anniversary Net MD. When you were walking with it, you could also conveniently control your music with a remote. So you just connect it to the top of your shirt or to your jacket if you're wearing one, and you can control what you were listening to. Okay? Other ways that you could make it look good, Sony had their own, of course, and they signed a deal with Utada Hikaru back in the late 90s. So you had this beautiful red one, which is the Utada Red Hots. So it was all about choices. Over here in North America, until the end, you really only had one choice, and that was Sony for both the hardware as well as for the media. Towards the end, you got Axia up here in Canada, which we saw a lot. Down in the States, Panasonic and Sharp also got into it, but they were really hard to find. And really, it was only Sony in North America, which is one of the main reasons it didn't fly. So, you know, you always had the choice. Now, of course, with NetMD, going back to that, you can see a nice little label. They always came with labels, just like you would get with a tape deck. A tape deck. Yeah, you would get labels with a tape deck. With a blank tape, so that you could make your own and tell what was on it. But a company came out with MD labels, and well, you could just download the way the labels would be printed out, and you could make your own, like I did. This is a picture. You can't see it very well. We'll get pictures in here that you'll probably see right about here or here. This is my Utada Hikaru disc with the cover of Distance on it as my label. So it was really about making it look good, as I said before, as it was having the music sound good. Now, one other reason why a lot of people loved the MD was it was such a step up from the tape. Okay, Sony claimed, and I doubt anybody ever actually tested it, that you could re-record an MD up to 1 million times before there would be any sound loss that you would notice. Okay, so you had near CD quality sound that you could erase and re-record as many times as you wanted without losing any clarity. That changed a little bit with MDLP when you were recording at LP4 because they had to compress the file so much to get it fitting on, but at standard MD length, that's what they claimed. And for the most part, it was true. It was great sounding audio. So, a little bit about the mini disc and why I lament the fact that it's no longer here. So, on that note, we'll call this a video and see you next time on CD Japan. Or TJX, actually, not CD Japan. We'd like to see you on CD Japan, though, buying some music, supporting them. Bye.